seems like it's a lazy question to ask, but what is your thoughts on that when you read the book, say for the last 5 years of Stephen King now versus even 5 years before that when he was doing the Mr. Mercedes? Do you writing itself has really changed, or do you think it's very much just in tune with maybe what Stephen King is going through with his own life and his changing lens?
Well, people look at the Mercedes books and the sort of related crime books, the ones he did for Hard Case Crime, to say that he's, changed direction. But if you go back to his early works, a lot of the earliest short stories that he published, even before Carrie, there was a lot of crime fiction in there. There were stories like The Fifth Quarter and The Wedding Gig and The Ledge. Some of them have scary elements to them, but there's no supernatural elements to them. They're straight up crime stuff. And knowing King as I do in terms of the sorts of things he likes to read and the things that he likes to watch, crime fiction has always been a big part of what he consumes. He's always been big on people like Donald Westlake and all of the great crime novelists over the years. That's been part of his jam. One of the challenges I had when I did the new book was, how do you divide up the eras in his life? And for me, the answer that seemed the easiest, but there was some logic to it, was by decade, because in the 1970s, that was sort of his Doubleday, era. He changed publishers at the end of that, but that was the time when he was, finding his feet, when he was publishing some really great books, but he was still, heavily under the influence of his editor, being forced to change things for purely economic reasons. And then he shifts to Viking in the 79 era. And then we have this 80s era where he's just on fire. Everything that he publishes becomes a bestseller at that point. And he's just cruising through. But he's also suffering from various sorts of addictions, which are fueling, his energy process in one way or another. And then, you reach the end of the 80s and you get the point where he goes into, recovery. He essentially empties the slate. He publishes 4 books in a matter of 16 months and says, okay, this is the stuff that came before, and now we're going to change gears a little bit. And we go into the 90s, and it's sort of a period of experimentation. He does 3 books in a very short period that are told from the perspective of a female protagonist. And, he's doing some interesting things with the early facets of the internet. Umney's Last Case, the short story, was the first one that he ever published as an ebook. And so he was seeing, what are the possibilities there? And then we reach the end of the 90s. And of course, there's his accident, which is a real defining point in his career. Everything that comes beyond that is heavily influenced by the repercussions of that. Plus, he moves publishers again, and he starts getting more critical appreciation, starting with books like Bag of Bones, and certainly On Writing is a book which even people who don't generally read King have cited as being a very important work for writers. And so then we go through the early 2000s. We've got the Dark Tower era where he finishes things off. And then, we get into the 2010s when, he really embraces his crime fiction roots, but also takes, the thing I've always noticed about the 2 different series, the Mercedes books and the Hard Case Crime books, is the first one in the trilogy starts out to be pretty much straight crime. The second one is a little bit more supernatural influence, and then the third one is full on, Stephen King horror, supernatural. It's no longer like a mainstream crime. So yeah, that's the way I was thinking about the way that you could sort of segment in one way his career.